Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from iRacing.com.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Racecraft Simulations V8 Veterans with a split 2 action of round 8 of season 22 out at the Red Bull Ring this evening. I'm your commentator, Hamish Munro, joined as always by the 6-time V8 Vets champion with 50 plus wins next to his name, Scotty Gamble. Scotty, a big night of racing. The last time we were here, it was Anzac Day of 2024. And now tonight, in February, we get to go racing once again around my personal favourite circuit in Europe, where supercars can have some spectacular racing on offer for us, and I think tonight is going to be no different.
Yeah, thanks, Hamish, for the intro, and to all those watching on YouTube out there and in the chat, thank you very much. You're absolutely right. What a cracking track has Red Bull been, especially in the Gen 2. It's been a little bit of a favourite. It offers plenty of opportunity. Only 9 corners on this track, Hamish, which is surprising. It feels like a lot more as a driver, but Gen 3, first time here for the vets, for us, in the new car. So I'm hoping it offers up the same excitement, the same sort of racing for drivers and for us as commentators, broadcasters to what it has done in the past. So really looking forward to see how the split 2 guys go tonight.
Yeah, I think it should offer us something special once again. I mean, it's a circuit that, you know, as I said, has created some fantastic racing for us. A lot of controversial moments for us as well over the years, with questionable decisions by some drivers. We're not going to name names, of course. That's not the time or place. But what it is doing is it has the opportunity to offer us a fantastic race. Sean Vettermill saying streamers dropping in and out. Well, I'm having no drop frames at the moment, Sean, so maybe just try and reload it and see what happens. It looks fine on my end, so should be all good. But, yeah, you know, Scotty, and I love this place. I think it's one that you can get into a real rhythm and you can get into your strides very, very easily around here. And when you hit those consistent, clean laps, every single lap of the whole race, you feel like you're on top of the world. I garner a perfect qualifying lap at this track feels as good as anywhere else in the world, because there are so many little minute details to approaching every single corner and how you can get the most out of it. You think of turn 3, the little nuances you need to approach that corner with to get the most out of it. It's deceivingly difficult, which we've spoken about a lot here, but it's one that I think is very rewarding when you can get that perfect lap together.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many turns, especially at the start, turn 1. That always offers up a little bit of excitement. You know, how drivers will get through that. So it's going to be interesting. Got to get off the start line, get yourself clear, try and maximize that position early. And strategy will come into it. Fuel burn. There's quite a bit going on. 2 compulsory pit stops, as always here. But crucially, Hamish, and we might have a change in the sup regs with the fuel limits this week.
Yeah, we may do indeed. I did check the sup regs leading into this race. It did state, at least in the session, that it was 100% fuel refill. We have had some races where it's been 70%, which has then changed the strategy of some drivers in the field, of course. But, I mean, this place here, you mentioned it, 9, 10 corners. I mean, it looks like a bottle opener, to be fair, but it's one that I'd be happy to crack a beer open with. It all starts on the main straight as you run up the hill towards Nicky Lauda curve at turn 1. This spot of the track, one of the biggest danger zones. The first sort of 3 main corners of this place, turn 1, 3, and 4, they're the biggest danger zones, but they're the biggest overtaking opportunities that you have around this track. It's one that if you run it too wide, you're going to cop a slowdown. It's one that if you hug the curb too much and catch that sausage curb, you can lose the rear and end up in the wall. And it's one that there's really no room for error. It's also a spot that at the start of the race, Scotty, drivers could be caught out and we could have an early opportunity for a safety car because, you know, 40-odd drivers alongside each other through turn 1. It doesn't really like it at this place. But if you can make it through turn 1 nice and clean, you can make it through without the slowdown, losing all my words, and you can make it through without catching that curb, where you have a mega run up towards turn 2 at Munza Turn, and up towards turn 3 at the hairpin at the top of the hill. And this is the next tough spot. It's the spot of you want to try and run the car out as far left as possible without getting that off track. You want to try and pretty much put your car in the middle of the curb and then try and turn it as late as possible to get it as tight as possible and straighten the corner, because it is more than a 45-degree turn up at turn 3. It's off camber to on camber. It's difficult, but it's a spot that we could see some nuclear blow-ups if drivers are a bit overzealous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about traction out of that corner, how you can maintain, like you mentioned, the momentum through the corner, get the power down, get the traction slightly uphill, and have your decent run all the way down to turn 4. I like to call this one turn 4, but it's turn 4 on this track map called Raunch Turn. It is a little bit raunchy because there is overtaking opportunities. Very easy to lock a brake, especially on the inside right as you head in. We could see some action there tonight, and looking forward to seeing how drivers navigate that. Be careful of marbles as you come out of turn 4. Head through a sweeping turn 5. It's all about getting the power on again out there while you're turning this car all the way over to the right-hand side. 75-metre board on the brakes. It's not too hard, though. You want to trail this one in and get up. Some people might use the curb to get up over the line. Others will ride it a little bit wider. But again, it's about traction. Little burst down to turn 7, Hamish. We could see some fireworks happen through that section. It's a very technical section. And again, it's down into 3rd gear just to get the rotation. All about the power. And you've got to watch the sand on the right-hand side on exit.
Yeah, so turn 7 at Graz, that's a spot there. If you can get a run, you can set yourself up in 2 corners time for a real ballsy move, but if you pull it off, you're going to look like absolute Superman. You mentioned the run through 6. Got to be careful of running it wide, as you said. Careful not to catch that sand. It's the same at turn 8. You got to be careful as you run it out too wide on the left. Not to cop off tracks, not to cop slowdowns, and not to cop the dreaded sand on the outside of the track. But the run down towards turn 9, if you've perfected that exit at 7, you've perfected the run through turn 8, and if your opponent may have copped a slowdown through turn 8 as well, you can get a move done through turn 9. It's wild, it's woolly, and it takes a little bit of tangoing from both drivers. You know, it takes 2 to tango, or it takes both drivers to be on the same page, and maybe for one just to let it up a little bit into turn 9 for Jock and Rick turn. But if you can get that turned in nicely, run the car out wide, not too far wide off the AstroTurf, otherwise you're going to get one of those dreaded off tracks and possibly even a dreaded slowdown. And then also through turn 10, can't cut too tight because you'll get a slowdown, you'll get an off track. Can't run too wide on exit because you'll get an off track. The main thing tonight, we mentioned it a lot, off tracks, they are going to be the major factor at this place, Scott. Not just keeping it out of the wall, not just keeping it out of the side of another car, but keeping it on the black stuff and staying away from off tracks. You've only got 17 to play with. They can go within the blink of an eye around this place. And it's one that will test drivers in battles and keeping themselves nice and clean. You've also then got to think about incident point limits, as we said, 17. If you get into incidents and you've had a couple of off tracks as well, all of a sudden you're on wood to cop that 17 and cop that drive through as well. But this was opened back in 1969. This layout's been used ever since 2016 when it returned to the F1 calendar. 4.32 kilometers, 2.6 miles, 10 turns. We're doing 200 Ks here this evening across 47 laps of the wonderful Spielberg circuit here in Styria in Austria. Cars are out on track though for the warm-up as we lead in towards round 8 of the season, the 8th race of the season as well, Scott. And I'm very excited because I mentioned last week we are on for arguably my favorite triad of tracks to end the season out on. Red Bull Ring, Sandown, and Phillip Island. As a broadcaster and as a racer, I could not be more happy right now because I think we're going to get some exceptional racing over the next few weeks, including tonight. I think we're also going to get one hell of an end to this championship as well. As we come into this round, we know that Logan Barnett leads the title race, and we know that Barnett has been on absolute fire this season. We know as well that if he can get himself another win, he's one step closer to confirming that split one appearance for season 23. Pretty much the way you look at it is if he has a solid run in the final round, but he gets the win tonight, the win next week, it's going to not only be hard for him to lose the championship, it's going to be hard for him to not be a split one driver in season 23. So that would be the aim right now for him to also keep the perfect run of counted top 10 finishes. If he can get another one here tonight, he would be on 7 out of 8 top 5 finishes this season and 7 out of 8 top 10 finishes as well. That is if that were to happen. So at this point, Scott, your teammate Logan Barnett looks to have this title race wrapped up. And if he gets another win tonight, is there anyone that can realistically stop him?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of drivers been driving very, very well. Jason Spriggs, I think he's just been super consistent. We've talked about it with other drivers who have made their way up into Split 2 over the previous seasons, and they've gone about, changed the way they're racing. Jason Spriggs is one of those drivers. He's showing he's ready to race up into Split 1. But getting back to Logan, he has absolutely been dominating. He's had a couple of mediocre rounds, but the rest of them, when he's been on, he has absolutely owned it. So he's driving exceptionally well. He's done the hard work, Hamish, by himself. He's worked hard with teammates as well. So congratulations to him. And that's what you have to do to put yourself up there every week, week in, week out. But you mentioned about the 3 tracks, Red Bull, Sandown, Phillip Island. That is absolutely epic, mate. And what a way to finish this season. I think that's a great track choice. Maybe some questionable ones throughout the season, but the way we're going to finish off this season 22 championship, those 3 tracks are absolutely brilliant in the V8s.
I think these last 3 may make up for some of those track choices throughout the season. Scotty, I know the exact one that you're referencing as well, but I actually think that these next 3 tracks, including tonight, are good enough to make up for it because we know that Red Bull offers great racing. Obviously, Sandown is one of the most well-known supercars tracks out there and does create some good racing as well. And then as you also then look at Phillip Island, which is anyone's game at that point. We know how chaotic we be and we know how clean it can be as well. So it's a real Sophie's choice in terms of what are we going to get in that final round. But regardless, round 8 is coming our way. Barnett starts on pole once again. So the championship leader has led himself to the promised land where he needs to be tonight. It's not round 2, it is round 8. I forgot to change that. Good job. He's led himself to the promised land once again, and he's put himself on pole position ahead of championship rival Dean Logsdale, who's been up there week in and week out and is challenging for those other podium positions to get himself up into Split 1 next season with that of Stacey Boyd and Paul Burns. Stacey's had a little bit of a rough run this season, hasn't gone quite as well as what we would have thought, but he's back up there tonight in qualifying. Paul Burns up there as well. Jason Spriggs, he's been resurging this season. He's in that championship fight as well. Damon Fisher, P6, a second Team AJR car inside the top 10. They'll start ahead of Wayne Sanderson and Chris Blanchard in behind. Jason Fewens returns to the series with an incredible top 10 qualifying position ahead of Nova Sim Sports, Sean Vandermeulen in behind. Simon Heddersheed returns as well. He will start P11 ahead of Michael Schroeder for your top 12. With Jim Caperonis and Ricky Hyde in behind. Alistair Bales and Daniel Sheriffs will make up the top 16 with Lon Mackay and championship contender Matt Muggleton. He's going to have some work to do tonight if he hopes to continue to gain points and continue his rise up the rankings this season. They'll start ahead of Dave Arney and Adrian Zeal for your top 20. Jeremy Bush, Jamie Peters will start in the top 22 with Rick Viger and Mick Clifton the top 24 this evening. Shane Randall, Simon Haynes, they'll start alongside each other with Derek Lovegrove and Matt Scholes for your top 28. Scott Weston, Nick Hazel the top 30. Troy Sipple, Matt Stoyles, Brett Fisher, Sean Cullen, the top 34 with Peter Baxter and Richard Barella, the top 36 cars. With Brett Taylor not setting a time in qualifying, neither did Todd Duggan, and Scotty Van Loon, unfortunately, has had to back out of this race last minute for work duties. So, you know, for someone who we were penciling in, Scotty, as who could challenge for the title, he has not been around all season, apart from a couple of rounds, and well, he'll have to come back in season 23 and challenge for the Split 2 title.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Scotty Van Loom. He's a much-loved member of the V8 Vets community, and you know he has shown great pace. He has been a Split 1 driver, and we were looking forward to seeing him into Split 1 next season. But at this stage, you say he'd be back into Split 2.
Yeah, you would hope he would be once again. We're waiting for lights to go up, though, for these drivers on track. Barnett and Logsdale, front row of the grid. Boyd Burns in behind. Who's going to get the jump down towards turn 1? We have to be careful and cautious of chaos as we are underway, and the scramble for 200 Ks at the Red Bull Ring begins once again as Barnett leads them up the hill through turn 1 for the first time. They'll exit onto the second straight. We'll keep an eye on turn 1 because we could get some chaos and carnage early here if drivers are not careful. I think there's been a little bit of contact with some drivers. Peters is in the wall. I think I saw that was one of the Quantum cars involved as everyone's going off. I think it was Simon Haynes. He's carrying heavy damage on the front of that car, and for Jamie Peters, he's had to keep going as there's another blow up at turn 3. Lon Mackay, Sean Vandermeulen spun round. Hasler's been caught up as well. So it's early carnage in the mid-pack and the rear of the field, but for Barnett and for Logsdale, they've had a great start to this race as Todd Duggan's also been slowed up down at turn 3. But for Vandermeulen, it's a nightmare before it's even begun, Scott, and he's already down towards the back of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked like he was going backwards and forwards trying to clear that car there beside him, and they looked a little bit stuck together. But what a start by Jason Spriggs. He gained 2 positions off that line, Hamish. That's exactly what he needed to do starting in P5. He got the jump very nicely with Barnett and Logsdale holding positions. Boyd Burns went backwards, and importantly, Jason Fewens, he jumped 3 positions off the start too. Fantastic result for him on this first lap.
Jamie Peters has been in the wars early in this race, Scott. He's already gone off the road at turn 4, and now in kind of rehash positioning, he has to try and get himself back into this struggle with more wheel issues in practice. We'll see if those continue to mur him during the race as well. Big news coming apparently into this race. It was actually out of this race, but into this race. Jamie Peters, effective of round 8, has left Infinity Motorsport, running as a privateer it seems tonight, and whether he returns to the series after round 8, well, I suppose that's going to come down to how his night goes. At the moment, it is not going swimmingly for the 950 Mustang further back in the field. But for Barnett, the championship leader, he continues to lead the way in the 100 Mobile for 9.5 Sim Sports Logsdale P2. Spriggs already up 2 spots into P3. Boyd, Burns, Fewens, Fisher, Sanderson, Blanchard. Caperonis, the top 10. Big movers already here, Scott. Troy Sipple's up 9 positions in this race. Todd Duggan's up 11 further back. Barella, Baxter, Cullen up 7. Hasler up 7. Scholes up 8. Shane Randall up 7. He avoided some of that early carnage at turn 1. Viger up 7 as well, but biggest mover inside the 10 is Fewens and Caperonis. They're both up 3. That's allowed Caperonis to enter the top 10 at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great start by Jimmy Caperonis. He'd be super happy with that. A couple other standouts, Adrian Zeal, Zippy Fly, he's up 5. He's into the P15. Matt Muggleton, championship contender. He got a great start as well, Hamish. He's up 5, up into P13, looking to make ground as this race goes on.
Barnett's its fastest lap of the race, 131.99 the last time by for the championship leader. He's already started to gain time on Logsdale in behind him, 2.3 seconds. is now the gap between the 9.5 Sim Sports Camaro and the Team AJR Mustang in P2 at the moment. Peters is over the radio, obviously calling in that incident on lap 1 with, we believe, was Simon Haynes. So we'll see what race control say about that. As you see, Logsdale's car just squirreling into turn 3, not comfortable under brakes, it seems. Is he struggling to hold back Jason Spriggs and Boyd and Burns as well as the train starts to flow on in behind him? It's good to see Fewens back out there tonight. Here's Scotty, and he's up inside the top 10, P6 at the moment for Fewens. He's had a good start in this race. What could have been maybe if he'd actually run a full season up to this point.
It's an interesting one with Jason. We've seen him in Split 1. He's driven incredibly well at times, especially certain tracks. So really good to see him back and driving in the top 10. So that's a great for him. I mean, he's got some good drivers in front of him. Paul Burns, he's made good ground all season. And Stacey Boyd, our international driver with the Pro Plumbing Supplies, a livery from Nova Sim Sports on the side of his car there, looking absolutely fantastic. It's really good to see him in the top 5, back in maybe a bit of form. He won some races, won a race last season, Hamish. So you mentioned in the intro he's been a little bit up and down. Perhaps this is another resurgence of the American.
Well, speaking of Nova Sim Sports, there's obviously big news if you paid attention to the Season 23 sign-up sheets, which they are already out. Sign-ups are live. You can sign up for Season 23 as long as you're an existing Vets member. I don't believe they've gone public yet with that one, but if you paid attention to the sign-up list, well, the driver who's had an unfortunate start to this race tonight, Sean Vandermeulen, this will be his final season in Nova Sim Sports colours as he looks to make the move over to your crew of 9.5 Sim Sports for Season 23, Scotty.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there for everyone to see, and the keen eye will spot it. So it has been spotted, and congratulations to Sean. Looking forward to having him on board over at 9.5 as we build up the V8 Vet side, the team there. He'll be a good addition there. He's got a ton of wealth to lean on, and I think we'll see him grow. Perhaps we might start achieving some of those, some of those things that you mentioned throughout the season of that driver, Hamish.
Yeah, well, we did mention that we predicted that Sean would win a title in 2025, and well, arguably, looking at the current championship standings, he could not have made a better choice than go to the team that is currently winning the championship in Split 2, and one that has the Split 1 championship contender in yourself, Scott, on board in that team as well. So obviously there's a wealth of knowledge for him to gain off of 9.5. He's been at Nova Sim Sports now for a little under a year. So maybe it's time. Maybe it was time for him to move on and again just try and grow himself as a driver. But for Barnett, the only growing that's happening right now is the gap between him and Logsdale, 2.8 seconds back to P2 for the Team AJR car. He'll be running a nice, clean, consistent run at the moment. Scott, want to get to that first pit stop in about 9 laps time or so. Critical lap of this race, depending on fuel usage, was about lap 10 or lap 11, depending if you're running 3.6 or 3.5. So for Logsdale, do we maybe see an early stop for some drivers before lap 10? It is a long time to go on tyres, but it does mean you've got one compulsory pit stop done before that critical lap here tonight. And if safety cars go your way, and I know we don't like drivers driving two safety cars happening, as Todd Duggan has had a big moment at turn 1, and that thing is absolutely destroyed, Scott. Front wheel is hanging on by an absolute bearing at this stage, but I mean, if he's still going, so it's not a safety car just yet, but we don't agree with drivers playing to the safety car card. But it is also then a sound strategy to pit before critical lap in case you have to pit on critical lap or around them and you can get home without needing another pit stop.
Yeah, there is a strategy there. I mean, we love to see the racing, and I'm sure the drivers that love to be racing, so especially side by side, and, getting out there and doing that. I guess there is a thought you can play for the safety car. We have 2 compulsory pit stops, open fuel tonight of 133. There is probably a fair chance, a reasonable chance of a safety car. A lot of drivers would like to get the second stop done, perhaps on that safety car if it does come out, critical lap number being lap 11. You can make it from lap 10 if a safety car comes out. Before that, you could fuel save and definitely make it from that if that was your last stop. Long way to go on tyres though, Hamish, and that could hurt a few drivers as well. And heavy car, a light car is a fast car, heavy car full fuel, might see a change in how drivers go about it and how their tyre wear performs over that stint.
First stop of the race, Jamie Peters is in pit lane for his first, I would say, unscheduled stop, seeing as he had some damage on the front of that car, perhaps wanted to get to this point, and then if he had damage, come in to fix the car up and then take some fuel as well, or it just took him long enough to determine that the car needed to be fixed at this point. Duggan, of course, is in. There was no way he was going to keep going with the level of damage that that car had off the contact at turn 1 as well. For Barnett, it is smooth sailing at the front end of town. For Hedesheed, who's back in the series tonight after a couple of weeks away, he is hot on the heels of Jim Caparonis. And, well, we can remember back a little while ago, Scotty, these two drivers were battling in and around for a championship in Split 2, and how things have changed since the change of measuring systems here in Vets, and how that actually then changes who has been contenders and who's been maybe a contender for a race win or a podium every so often, but maybe not a championship at this point.
It's an interesting one. Jim found himself up into Split 1. He thoroughly deserved to go up there. Maybe lacked a little bit of confidence during that time. But, he had his opportunity, and I'm sure he's keen to get back up there. But, he's driving very well at the moment, and he's been driving very well for a few weeks. As we see Hedesheed, he comes up the inside, a little lock up there of the rears. He's going to run wide. This could be a slowdown for him. This will let Matt Muggleton through. Surely Matt's going to get him here. And that's given a little bit of breathing space there for Mr. Caparonis. But, Hedesheed will be absolutely cussing himself over that. He had that done.
Yeah, he will maybe throw in the chili bins at the windows for that one, Mr. Hedesheed will be. But, a simple mistake. Anyone can make it, of course. Jim played that smart. He let him have the line and tucked up back in behind him and took the spot back. So, Jim's running a smart race. We know that he's a smart racer, Scott. We know that Jim will play the smart game. He won't try and push it too hard. He's been very unlucky previously, namely last week at Snetterton. But we know that he's a smart player. We know that he plays the game, and we know that for Jim, it's all about staying consistent and trying to get those consistent finishes. I mean, he's not a part of a necessarily fundamental team to Vets. He was previously at WKMP, and before that at Old Mate and Sons, who have been in Vets for a long, long time. SCR is a relatively young team. It's built up of drivers who've been in Vets for a long, long time, but as a unit themselves, they are relatively young, and they're relatively pretty far spread out. I mean, majority of their drivers are in Split 2. They've got none in Split 1. They've got some in Split 3, and they've got some in Split 4. But for them, as I said, they're a relatively new unit. This version of this team is only fresh for Gen 3. Prior to this, they only had a handful of drivers alongside Hoffy, and then now they're growing more and more. And it's how well they're going to gel together that will then determine how well that team does and how much success that team has going forward in Vets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the cars are unmistakable on track. I would say to the drivers out there, get over to and see Ross over at SRW. I'm sure you'll do up a good library, and I'm sure there's plenty of others out there, because I think there's a little bit of a thing there, a theme with the Southern Cross racing crew. They could really make that car pop out and be quite unique. But
you can
at the moment,
send me a message as well for a cheap self-plug too.
Yeah, absolutely. There is yourself out there. There's plenty of other drivers. So, plenty of other people who can do a nice, beautiful livery. But the driver I was interested in was Ricky Hyde, Hamish. He's got himself in the top 10. He got himself past Jim Caparonis. He's up 4 positions. He was all over the back of Blanchard. Now, he's been a driver that's moved through the field all this season, not necessarily getting very good qualifying results, but driving racing results. He's been absolutely phenomenal, making grounds and finding himself up around that inside the top 10 consistently. So yeah, I think it won't be long as we see him. He's going to come into pit lane, I believe. Is that right? Yes, he is. He's going for that early stop. That's an interesting one. So perhaps he sees he's got some clean air where he can make some ground. He felt he was getting held up there by that battle going on with Blanchard and Sanderson. Yeah,
it's a good opportunity there for Hyde to maybe get an undercut done on some of these drivers. Matty Scholes is also in too. He's putting pressure on Shane Randall for a period there, so maybe he's trying to undercut Randall now as well in the 501. We've seen prior to now that Randall and Zeal, they've been on track together previously this season, where they've had to have a bit of a strategy battle to get around each other on track, whether it was Zippy staying ahead of Shane or Shane getting past in pit stops. So we'll see if that's going to be employed here tonight as well. They are running very similar lap times though, but Arguably, Shane's probably the more consistent lap time driver over Adrian. He's still trying to find his footing in Gen 3. And I'm sure that Zippy's not too far away from getting to that more consistent lap time running that Shane has. But of course, Shane being a former Split 1 driver, he's able to turn it on when he needs to, and he's able to try and catch someone up when he needs to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was very difficult for Shane when he went up into Split 1. He was by himself. It makes it hard. I know he had the incredible support from you guys over at Infinity Motorsport behind him, backing him, but it does make it difficult, and I say quite often that V8s is a confidence thing, and perhaps he was questioning his confidence at the time, but he has definitely shown he has the pace. So he could, once he starts gelling with this car, I expect him to go a little bit better. But you mentioned about Adrian Zill from Team AJR. He's had a little resurgent the last couple of races by the looks of it. He had a really good result for himself last round. He's got himself up into P16, up 4 positions from his starting grid. So that's a good call. Booster for him. I know he was down a little bit on himself, down on the racing. Perhaps that change over to the Gen 3. A few drivers have struggled, but we are at round 8. Some drivers are starting to find their feet right now.
Yeah, they are indeed. And of course, how can we forget, we've got a heap of chats out there with us this evening. We've been so enthralled with this race and getting through all the details of it as well. We need to give a shout out to everyone who's joining us here tonight. Sean Vandermillen in the chat, Luke Holman, Sarah out there, Wayne Sanderson, the Hoff's out there. He's missing this race and possibly a couple more due to a current injury that he has on the shoulder at this stage. Dean Logsdale with us too in the chat. Matt Muggleton's out there with us as well. Jason Fewins, Jason Spriggs is in the chat as well. Logan Barnett out there with us too, as well as Jackos out there as well. Jackos is saying the best IRL V8 race in the Gen 3 era. Crazy finish at Sydney, so we'll have to finish watching that one later on. But in saying that, in Vets, it's dry this week, Scott. In the officials, it's wet at Red Bull Ring. So maybe getting a bit of a reprieve in the Veterans, seeing as the admin did not want to run wet races this season. And drivers getting, just that little bit of, it's all right, you'll get used to the car this season, but next season we might throw some wet races out there for you.
Yeah, I would say the best way to say it is they were testing the waters there, mate, and seeing how it went. So I do believe we're going to have a 1 or 2 or maybe some more, few surprise things next season. So that could be really good. The calendar's already out. Would like to see some different times a day, but we've run this. This is consistent. This is what the drivers like to do. So that's, it's a good thing. It's a known quantity. So we'll be looking forward to a wet race. I think we're going to have different drivers do well because, if you race on the racing line, I don't know whether you've done much in the wet there, Hamish. I've given it a couple of goes, but if you race on the racing line, you go absolutely nowhere.
I've done wet racing in GT cars, not in the supercars yet, Scott. I've not been tempted by those waters just yet. I was happy to do it in the GT car, but the supercar would be a whole other beast in the wet weather. I've seen drivers struggle in it, and it's something that I want to have a crack at, but I don't know if I want to race in the wet personally in this car.
Oh, very, very difficult, especially with the lock rear differential, the big horsepower this car has. It's, the lack of aero in comparison to other vehicles. Yeah, it's going to be an absolute handful, and it's really going to test some drivers. So that's something to look forward to. But at the moment, the way the race is going, Logan Barnett's cleared a 5-second plus lead over Dean Logsdale. Now, Dean's driving incredibly smart. He knows what he's got to do. He's keeping it in P2, same as Jason Spriggs, although Logsdale has managed to clear a little bit over him. So 1.4, that might make Spriggs just on the edge of the draft here, which there is a little bit of draft in play, but yeah, so these two drivers, Logsdale and Spriggs, they've really grown this season in comparison to other seasons. We always known Spriggs has had the pace, but the way he's driving this championship this season is absolutely incredible. It's been good to see Logsdale, especially the half of the season from round 4 onwards. He's been incredible.
He's been absolutely incredible this last half of the season, has Logsdale. Spriggs has been as consistent as ever this season. It's been absolutely phenomenal from him. Gaps have now started to build for some drivers in the field. Paul Burns has finally offloaded Stacey Boyd and is now back up to where he started the race in P4. They've got Jason Fewins and Damon Fisher in behind. These guys have been in an intense battle majority of this race. Driver's eye cam for you of Damon Fisher. I don't know why it is with some Mustangs. It puts the, you can see the face of the driver in the helmet. This is not what we want. Few ones as well. I don't know why it's done that, but the Camaros work. So we have got driver's eye for the Camaros where you can't see the driver's face. But for Boyd, it's an intense run, and trying to stay behind Burns and keep yourself in check as they both file into pit lane. So you have to suspect possibly limit of some of the fuel strategies for some drivers, as Sanderson's also in. Fisher is as well, as is Schroeder. So Fewens will keep going. He'll go for another lap, but we do know that the undercut can be quite strong in these cars, Scott. We've seen that some drivers can get, if they go that extra lap, they can sometimes be caught out by others if they've gone a few laps before them. But realistically, the limit of the tanks for the 50 litres is about 15 laps. So they're not necessarily going to get the benefit of undercut on this first stop. It's really only going to happen in the second stop when they have a bit more breathing room, depending on how much fuel they put in, of if they can pit 2 laps before the car ahead of them. So we'll see if it works out in this first stop for some of those drivers. I think it'll also come down to how long their stops are. If we compare Matt Scholes, he came in a bit earlier with a 35-second stop. That's roughly 80 litres for him. He was in behind Shane Randall, who's in pit lane at the moment, and appears to be taking a similar fuel load, 34.5 seconds. So I think he's also taken 80 as well. So some drivers in the mid-pack towards the back of the field deciding to take a slightly longer stop on this first one to see if they can make up track position in clean air and then get the real benefits on the short stop later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a bad strategy at all. We've seen by the timing chart, drop off is around about that 1.1 to 1.4 seconds. So the undercut is absolutely on, and we've seen some drivers react to it. We had some drivers come in a little bit earlier. I'll be looking to see how Ricky Hyde is going, because he came in on lap 9, Hamish. These other drivers, they're coming in on lap 14. So that's 4 or 5 laps he's had on those tyres. Has he been able to make ground? As we see a driver going around, that's Lorne Mackay from Accelerate Sim Racing. He's watching the rejoin very carefully. He's got himself out. There's a car approaching him. Wayne Sanderson, he should get going and clear that very, very easily.
Well, that car looks a bit worse for wear now. That's almost like it's got the livery's got a bit of almost Sharpie work on it to make it kind of show the speed lines on the front of that car. It's unfortunate for Lorne. He is going to come in there and take his pit stop, but this will now hurt the strategy play from him. Logsdale's still in pit lane. Barnett has just left. Logsdale's now dropped, and Fewens has gotten past him in the pit lane, but the stop differences were about 10 seconds for their pit stops there, Scott. Logsdale taking 34.7 seconds, so he's taken roughly 80 litres. Fewens about 24.3 seconds, so maybe 60 litres for Jason on that first stop. So he's looking maybe at a split stop strategy in this race.
Yeah, it looked like Dean Logsdale had a little bit of trouble in the pit stops there too, Hamish. I think that cost him a little bit of time, but Fewens will be loving this. He's got a lot of car. He's made the jump. He is currently behind Logan Barnett. Where will the others come out of? I'm just trying to have a look through the field at the moment. I'm not sure where our P3 driver, Jason Spriggs, he's down into P16. Hamish, he's dropped 11 positions.
He has. How does that happen? He had a very slow entry and then a 37-second stop, but that's not enough for a stop hold. So I wonder what's happened to Jace. Maybe he came in early and they got caught up in traffic, possibly. I don't know, but that's a big loss for Jason Spriggs in this race as the top 5 all come in. Barnett will take back the lead of this race. Fewens will be in P2 by the time that he traverses past pit lane, and he's got Dean Logsdale looking to chase him down. 1.9 seconds is now the gap between Logsdale and Fewens. They've got Brett Fisher in between them, who is a lap down on the leader. So he'll have blue flags on Logsdale and Sanderson to let them go. Some of these drivers taking that split stop, some others taking the longer stop, so there should be some natural progression of cars getting back up to positions they were in. I suppose Spriggs gave up, what was it on some of those drivers? About 10 seconds. So maybe this is just the natural loss of position for him, taking that longer stop, Scott, compared to others, and he'll make it back up on the shorter stop next time by. I'd
question whether he took 10 seconds longer fuel than Logsdale, though. That's that's the thing that's got me puzzled. I think you said he took 6 seconds. Logsdale didn't take 26 seconds. Surely he would have taken a bit more fuel than that. But, you know, that lap traffic cleared for Logsdale very nicely. It was between him and Few, so, we see that pass coming down the inside there. Jason Spriggs wants to get on with it, doesn't he? And Hedeshees, he's going to get it back. Maybe that was a regress there.
Yeah, he let him go. It seemed that Spriggs just pulled that up. Thought that he came in a bit too hot and has let Hedesheed go there. So a bit of sportsmanship from Jason Spriggs. Doesn't want to get the position like that. He gives up some time to the cars ahead, but he doesn't want to do the wrong thing, and he's willing to let Hedesheed go and have a nice, strong battle with him. And Hedesheed has actually jumped Blanchard in the pit stop, so he's actually undercut Blanchard. Blanchard, though, taking 4 seconds worth of more fuel than what Hedesheed did, so he will still have to naturally give that back on the next pit stop comparatively to Blanchard. As Barnett sets another fastest lap of the race, 131.71 at the front of the field. Fewens is still P2. Logsdale is chasing him down with Wayne Sanderson hot on his heels inside of the top 4. Boyd inside your 5. Burns, Muggleton, Hyde, Caparonis, Hedesheed the top 10. Spriggs, Blanchard, Zeal, Schroeder, Viger the top 15. But some of those drivers do have to give up some time to others in the pit stops as well.
Yeah, this is a really interesting strategy. Matt Muggleton, he's gone for a little bit of a shorter field this time round, Hamish. Up 11 positions, got himself up into P7. So he's going to try and use that car, use that lighter fuel load, and see how he goes as we're watching Jamie Peters.
He had an incident. I think he might have actually straight line turn 1. I have a feeling that he may have had another wheel issue possibly. We'll keep an eye on that one. But yeah, he was closely following in, I think it was Matt Scholes, who is now about 2 seconds behind Peter's former teammate and Shane Randall. You mentioned Randall being in split 1 previously on his own. How's this now going to affect him in the final 2 rounds of this season and possibly into next season if his teammate James Boardman isn't able to get himself in a promotion position up into split 2? He would be in split 2 all on his lonesome with Randall, and possibly would have to go a full season before he could even see another teammate in the same split as him again if James or even Wayne Shepherd or Robert Crow could find themselves in a promotion position for season 24.
It's an interesting one. I think he has the experience in the split 2 to be able to handle it. There is another driver that's driving extremely well for you guys. We'd expect him to go up a split or 2 perhaps come next season. But it's interesting because as you look ahead, you see Rick Viger, Nick Horsler from Angry Birds Racing. They're working together. Their teammates on track. You see their teammates coming behind you and they're catching you. It does, it does raise that eyebrow. You have a bit of a look and you think about it. But it's doable. I've raced as a solo team member in a split before, Hamish, and it is absolutely doable, especially if you've got the experience that Randall does in this split.
I suppose the benefit for Shane is he does at least have a spotter with him. So he's not going to be all on his lonesome. He'll have someone being able to help him along the way with strategy and stuff like that. He just won't have the on-track support that he's previously had. Unless there's a split 2 driver, of course, wants to join Infinity Motorsport, then they are more than welcome to send their team owner a message. Cheap plug once again. I'm going to throw them all out over the next 3 weeks. I mean, we're in sign-ups, and you never know. I don't personally like poaching drivers from teams. I think that's actually wrong. But I think if a driver's looking for a new team and you can offer them a seat, I think that's different.
Yeah, well, they should explore their options and see what's the best fit for them, and perhaps that one is, and perhaps they feel they could help out there too. So maybe that might be on their mind. But I'm a little bit gutted for Jason Spriggs at the moment, Hamish. I know he's down that 6 positions. He had a hard time. He's finally got himself. He's still behind Simon Hedesheed, and he's dropped back a little bit. So I'm unsure what's going on with Spriggs tonight, because he was looking very quick on track, especially in that first opening stint. He held his own. Yes, he dropped back a little bit off Logsdale by about 1.5 seconds, but that wasn't much, and I expected him to be up there in podium contention tonight. He's got a lot of work to do if he wants to make it back there.
Someone who has had a great run is the driver just had a Ricky Hyde here, Matt Muggleton. I mean, even both these drivers, Hyde's up 6, Muggleton's up 11, was struggling with some blinking just then, but it seems to have settled itself now. But he finds himself, as a lot of drivers have this season, in the middle of the 801 SimSports sandwich between Paul Burns and Ricky Hyde, who've really been flying the flag for this team thus far, Scott, inside of the top 10 this season. Matt Scholes has been on real struggle street in Split 2. But for Burns and Hyde, these guys have been having an absolute cracker season. This is arguably Paul Burns' most consistent season ever since he went up to Split 1. I mean, this has been a phenomenal season for Burns. He's been one of the most underrated drivers, I think, in the entire field. He is really one of those silent assassins that I think you could highlight almost every week. He's always there. He's always in the top 10. He's always around the top 5, and he's always getting himself some solid points. So maybe he's starting to find his footing in this team after he joined them last season, and now he finds himself in the groove and ready to move, and that move might be back up to Split 1 in a couple of seasons' time.
Yeah, he's definitely worked hard at his game, and for me, as a team-wise, 801 Sim Racing in Split 2 has been an absolute standout. They have worked together. The pair of them in Paul Burns and Ricky Hyde been absolutely phenomenal the way they've made positions throughout the field, even perhaps sometimes not the best qualifying results. And it's definitely showing on track because Stacey Boyd from Nova Sim Sport has Paul Burns hunting him. Matt Muggleton, like, that's how well Burns is driving. Muggleton is just behind him. Doesn't look like he's really gaining much position on him. So I think these pack of 3 cars in Burns, Muggleton and Hyde are going to get on the back of Boyd very soon. This could open it up to a little bit of racing. And just behind him, Caperonis and Hedischid are going to look to try and cash in as well. So they're not too far off. And that is potentially the top 5 finishing position just ahead of him.
Could very well be. It's going to depend on how this race plays out. If we compare some of the pit stop times just quickly here, Scott, we can kind of just see where the drivers lie. So for Fewens, he has to give up about 10 seconds to Logsdale. He's giving up a bit less to Sanderson. He's giving up about 6 to Boyd, about 8 to Burns. So you'd argue with this sort of a gap that he should fall back in line behind these guys, but they're all going to be around each other on the exit of pits. They're all only giving up a couple of seconds, relatively speaking, to each other. The biggest gainer out of all of it is going to be Logsdale, because he's going to gain time on nearly everyone behind him, plus Fewens. So you'd have to predict and expect Logsdale to come out of pit lane on that second stop back in P2, but he's not going to be too much closer to Barnett without getting a safety car involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was mentioning lap times, that Logsdale was perhaps half a second faster than Jason Fewens that last lap, and is catching on him rapidly. He's 0.67 behind, so he's got his eyes forward after perhaps not the greatest of pit stops, as we see a couple other drivers changing positions. I don't think it will be too long before we see Logsdale on the back of Fewens and these drivers going at it pretty hard.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be an intense battle between both of them towards the halfway point of this race. We're at lap 20 of 47. We've only got about 3.5 laps before we are at that halfway point, and at 100 Ks down and 100 Ks to go here tonight for the Red Bull Ring. No safety cars just yet, but there has been a couple of incidents on track, which if the cars couldn't have made it back to pits, it almost definitely would have been a safety car just based on the amount of damage that was sustained. Some of those drivers, namely Todd Duggan, whose car was absolutely destroyed at turn 1. But then also Simon Haynes, Jamie Peters, who caught damage lap 1, turn 1 as well. So at this point, they've gotten into their rhythm. They've gotten into their nice, clean runs. This is sort of the regular situation at Red Bull Ring. It's, if you're not getting carnage, you're getting into the rhythm part of the race, the midway point where drivers are just trying to get to their next stop. It's a real strategy sort of a track. It's built on, if you can have a strong strategy, you can keep yourself in the fight. And again, it only takes one safety car to get you back into this thing if you are giving up some time to drivers ahead. But for Logsdale, he wants to do it on the road. He doesn't want to have to worry about safety cars. He wants to put the pressure on Jason Fewens as Matt Muggleton is going slow out of turn 2. I think there might have been some contact possibly with Paul Burns. But now for Muggleton, all that work that he's done, Scott, is all for nothing as he's now back outside of the top 10.
Yeah, he dropped back a ton of positions there. He was driving exceptionally well. I'm not sure what happened. Seen a little glimpse of a bit of smoke in the background, but it perhaps just didn't work out for Matty there. Thinking of teams that have been doing very well this season, Old Mate and Sons, there's been a bit of a resurgence for those guys there. They're driving well in Split 1. driving exceptionally well here in Split 2 with Matt Holden as well, who was a winner last round out. So he drove fantastic. But at the moment, the driver I'm impressed with their strategy, Hamish, Wayne Sanderson from Summer Cross Racing. He's only up 3 positions, but he took that lighter fuel load. He went for that that positioning, that track position. He's got clean air in front of him. And if we see Fewens and Logsdale start to really battle it out, he'll be able to close up, perhaps capitalise on it a little bit, because Stacey Boyd is a good 3.5 seconds back from that. So he can get involved in that battle very, very quickly.
He very well could, as Logsdale tucked right up behind the rear wing of Jason Fewens now as they come through turn 3, down towards turn 4. And for Fewens, well, it is now crunch time. He needs to try and put the foot down, because anything that he was going to lose to Logsdale in the next pit stop, it's only getting worse and worse. You know he already has to give up 10 seconds. 0.6 of a second is not 10 seconds, so it's almost more or less guaranteeing himself to drop back behind Logsdale after the pit stops. You'd have to argue maybe the smart play is you let Logsdale go here, Scott. You tuck him behind him and hope that he can help you build gap over Sanderson to hold out on the podium, or possibly even inside of the top 5, instead of giving up time by battling on track with Logsdale. And again, more or less playing that strategy game to get yourself the ticket to the end of the race where you can battle for those positions.
That's a very good point you make there for Fewens. He would want to capitalise on this short field, this track position, and if he noticed there was a faster driver and he wants to make this strategy work getting up behind him, you're absolutely right. You tuck him behind, use him, save a little bit of fuel, maybe get that extra lap, make this short stop that he did at that first pit cycle work for him. Otherwise, he'll find himself back in the field come that second cycle, and that's not where he wants to be.
No, it's not. Bit of lap traffic on the Exeter pit lane. Derek Lovegrove comes out and will tuck in nicely behind the battle for P2 between Logsdale and Fewens. Logsdale right up behind the rear wing of Fewens as he looks to send it up the inside at turn 3. Can he get this job done under brakes, or is Fewens going to be able to defend? You can go too wide through here very easily, and now it's a drag race towards turn 4 for Fewens and Logsdale. Logsdale just eking ahead of Fewens, but he will try and fight this thing tooth and nail, but a door-to-door into the braking zone between them. The Mustangs battling. Fewens back ahead of Logsdale now, so this looks to now fire up completely to nuclear levels, but they need to keep themselves in check, Scott. They need to keep themselves in check, as Fewens is having some blinking issues as well. Hopefully that little knock in the side of the car didn't knock the Ethernet cable out of the modem, because he would hate to give this away due to an internet issue once again.
Oh, you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't wish that on anyone. You absolutely want to do it on track. That was good battling. That was fair. This is these cars do take that little bit of side. You've got to be right beside them though, and you can knock on doors quite easily. But that was interesting, very interesting. Would have woken them up. Their eyes will be like a dinner plates in those cockpit right now, Hamish.
Fewens is giving us the answer in the chat. He's texting while driving, apparently. No effing chance. I'm not able to do the entire season, so I'm here to race, not let people through. Completely fair point from Fewens as well, Scott. He doesn't have to worry about a championship. He doesn't have to worry about strategy. He wants to race to be wherever he can be, and he's going to try and battle Logsdale on track no matter what position Logsdale is in the championship. So it's a noble one. I wouldn't say it. Some may say selfish. But as a racer, you're here to race. And I can agree with that sentiment of whenever you can show up, you want to race whenever possible.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. He's absolutely entitled to race. We're just talking from a strategy point of view, perhaps, if you were looking for track position. But that's not his mentality. He's shown the field that's not his mentality, and that's how he's going to go about the rest of the season. And absolutely, why not have a scene, get in there and race some of these top drivers, see where you stand for the next coming season, and actually show them what you're all about. So exactly. That looks like what he's doing, and yeah, absolutely do not have a problem with that.
It's one I can respect as well. I mean, it's a driver's choice if they want to let someone go or if they want to battle them. And for Jason, he wants to have battles. He wants to get into the nitty and gritty and get as much battling and racing that he possibly can this season. You know, if you can't race every week, why would you show up and just want to cruise around when you could show up and actually race? The thing that this is now creating, though, is it's a headache for Dean Logsdale, because Wayne Sanderson is now starting to close in on this battle. seeing as Logsdale's starting to get held up now from Fewens, who wants to keep pushing this battle to its absolute limits. Logsdale's not quite able to, not quite willing to send it at turn 1. He tucks back in. He's going to try and play the smart play here and see when he can get this job done, or may just wait for the next pit stop. As Muggleton comes into pit lane, we'll see what sort of gains he can get off of this strategy.
Yeah, 22 a lap run for Muggleton on those tyres. He'd be hoping for a safety car, let those tyres wear down, or cool down, should I say. But let's see if Logsdale can get the drive out of Team Major. Not quite. That lighter car of Fewens is able to just get on the traction and run it down this little straight here as we come into, aka turn 3, hard on the brakes here, Hamish. And then you've got to release them, really trail that brake in so you can get the rotation on the rear end of that car. About using the front end of the brakes. Been quite a bit of talk about how drivers are adapting to that within this car and within the setups, but these two drivers have done that absolutely beautifully. So it could explode from here, but you're absolutely right. It's not far off Sanderson. He would be hoping these two can get into a little bit more of a battle, bring him up. He's 1 second behind. He was 1.3 seconds behind last lap. He's made a 3/10 this lap.
So Fewens and Logsdale will continue their battle forward to their pit stops. A bit further back, we've got a battle starting to brew between Heddersheed, Caperonis. They've got Hyde and Burns ahead of them, so there may need to be maybe a little bit of the enemy of my enemy is my friend here with Caperonis and Heddersheed to maybe put the assault on those 801 sim racing drivers up ahead of them. The benefit, though, for Burns and Hyde is they'll be in Discord together. They'll be able to communicate exactly what they need to do. For Heddersheed and Caperonis, if they wanted to work together, they're going to have to do it completely by feel. But for Heddersheed, he wants the position. Too wide at turn 1. As he comes round Caperonis, Kappa had to be careful of running it too wide, not copping the slowdown as Scholes is back in pit lane once again further back. And now their battle looks to continue forward. Further back in the field, Richard Barella. He's currently got Jamie Peters in behind, as well as Lorne Mackay. We saw the wars that Mackay got himself in earlier. He's just trying to get back those 10 positions he's now lost. But for Richard, he's already up 11 in this race, Scott. So he's done a great job to manage a clean run in this race and looking to forward himself in this race too, as Fewens has had an off track in that intense battle. It's fired up and Sanderson and Logsdale are past him.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see the positions swapping backwards and forwards between Logsdale and Fewens. Fewens was looked to be fighting that tooth and nail, and there was a little bit of an off track, a little bit perhaps ran wide there, but Sanderson is all over the back of Logsdale. This is absolutely fantastic for Wayne Sanderson to get himself on the podium at this stage of the race. He would be absolutely loving that. That's really good driving, really good strategy by those guys.
And the thing for Sanderson is he's having to give up roughly 3 to 4 seconds on Stacey Boyd in their next stop. Boyd is 3.2 seconds off the back of Sanderson. So now the smart play for Sanderson is don't try and battle Logsdale. Use Logsdale to extend that gap up to 4 seconds so you know that you're going to come out around Stacey Boyd, but you should come out still on the podium. So, you know, it's not things that people may necessarily think about mid-race, but that's one strategy that I think a lot of drivers need to start imploring, is realizing where am I in position to the other drivers who took their stops? Where am I in position to their pit stop length as well? And figuring out where you need to be so you know you're going to come out roughly in the same position in your next stop and counteract those strategy plays that other drivers are pulling on you.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. At this stage, Wayne Sanderson, he needs to make another further 1.2 seconds on Stacey Boyd. He needs to grow that gap to make that strategy work. Oh, as we see, is that Jamie Peters again in the black car?
That's another wheel. That's another wheel failure.
You can see the tyres are totally to the left. He's parked. This could be that safety car, Hamish. We could see everyone cycle into the pit lane. The person who might benefit from this is Matt Muggleton. He got his stop out early.
He did indeed. So if he pushes on, he could be in one hell of a position here to make up some spots. So for Muggleton now, he needs to push this thing as hard as possible. Peters is blinking whilst that car's parked in the wall, but he is still there at this stage. And that car is broken, and it has been confirmed from race control as well. Racecraft Simulations safety car coming out on track. So Barnett needs to jump straight in pit lane, and look at that. The drivers who are right on pit entry are coming straight in, including the likes of Randall and Schroeder and Zeal. The Angry Birds cards of Viger and Hasler. They've kept going. Bales, Arnie, Fisher, they're all in. Where is the safety car? He's still in pit lane. So these guys are going to get they're going to get a benefit here. They're not going to get held up.
They have absolutely mastered that somehow. The safety car wasn't out on track there, or looks even ready to be out on track, and these two have managed to skip by. So this could be really beneficial to these two Angry Bird Racing drivers in Rick Viger and Nick Horsler. They're working together. We mentioned it earlier, Hamish, how they were working together. Well, they've absolutely worked perfectly together there. As we see Matt Muggleton, is he going to clear it in time? I think he has cleared him in time, because it's the end of there.
So he got past him. Safety car's on track, but they are waiting for the leader, Logan Barnett, who is now in pit lane. So Barnett is in. We expect every other driver to come in for their second pit stop. So Muggleton leads the way for the two stoppers at this stage. He's got 24 roughly seconds up to Viger and Hasler, but the drivers we have to keep an eye on is Blanchard and Hedersheed, because those were the drivers who he was in battle with throughout that period before his pit stop. So top 10 all in. Blanchard in. Viger and Hasler should be in as well. Remembering these guys were in battle with Shane Randall, and that strategy has actually played off for Randall well here, Scott. He's actually ahead of
there's a car around.
That was that Todd Duggan? It was Todd Duggan who was around. So he's not only goes from bad to worse. He will get his wave around though, luckily for him, so he will get a lap back here. The point I was about to make was Shane Randall's strategy worked off for him. He is now past Adrian Zeal. So obviously he looked to go longer on the last stop comparatively to Zeal. That's now flipped, and now Randall's back past him as well. So that's one of those little strategy plays that some drivers are employing to maybe get past some other drivers that they don't necessarily want to battle with on track and would rather get the job done with the pit crews out there. So those main drivers are in. Muggleton is passing the pit lane. He's back inside of the top 10. Is he going to get past Fewens on exit? Oh, it's going to be tight. I think Fewens got him. Yeah, Fewens got him, but Muggleton's passed.
Close. I think he has got, didn't quite get there. And we're talking like, a nose cone there, Hamish. That was so close. A couple of big gainers here. We talked about the teams working together, 801 Sim Racing. Ricky Hyde up into the top 5 with that strategy. Paul Burns is still there with him. Watch those two work together. Jason Spriggs, that big extra fill in that first stop, he's gone very short on the second one. He's got himself back up into P3. That really surprised me. I thought he had some issues there in his pit stop, but he knew what he was doing, and he's made this work. So he's back up into P3 where he was in the first stint.
He's done well to get back to where he was. At this stage, though, we are under Racecraft Simulations safety car, so we're going to take this opportunity to give thanks to our title sponsor, Racecraft Simulations, to give off their time to show off some beautiful pieces of machinery that's on sale in their warehouse over at Perth Airport. If you're in the WA area or you're in the Perth area, head over to Grogan Road at Perth Airport. Check out Racecraft Simulations, have a chat to John and the team, test out some rigs, and if you've got a bit of spare coin or you're looking out for a rig, they might be able to help you out over there at Racecraft Simulations. You can, of course, order one to be delivered to your house, straight to your front door from Racecraft, but we'll be back very, very shortly after these messages from Racecraft Simulations. Great to be back, and a big thank you to Racecraft Simulations for supporting the V8 Veterans, and a big thank you out there for watching along with us and taking time out of your evening, out of your day to join us here as well. Be sure to hit the like button, to subscribe, the bell icon as well. We would so appreciate it if you would support the channel by doing so, and by supporting the other splits that get broadcasted on this channel in Split 3 and Split 4 as well. And if you were to go support SimSpeed TV and support them for all the work they do, not only for Split 1 of the Vets, but also everything else that is over on their channel too. Be sure to subscribe and support those guys. You can catch my co-host Scott Gamble as he battles for the Split 1 Championship live Thursday nights, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Times. But tonight, Logan Barnett's got the pressure back on him. He's been known to be a master of the race restarts at the front of the field, and the championship leader will have control towards the final corner of the Red Bull Ring, with Logsdale and Spriggs and Boyd and Burns and Sanderson, Fewens, Muggleton, Caperonis and Schroeder inside the 10. He's gone green right on Apex, exactly where you want to do it, Scott, around here. He pulled that off to absolute perfection, did Logan Barnett. Not a step wrong in that restart, and in fact, he's caught Logsdale napping a little bit off it as well.
Yeah, that was absolutely a gem of a restart there by Logan. Perfect time to go. He's already checked out 0.7 of a second over Dean Logsdale. So that gives him that little bit of clear air, and it's crucial that you need that and that little bit of a stretch. Looks like a few other drivers back in the field got caught out on that restart too, perhaps napping. I could see a big gap between Blanchard and Damon Fisher. Yeah,
those guys are continuing their fight. Fisher really lost out in that pit stop period. He dropped outside of the top 10 and is now down 7 spots. He only had a 9-second stop, though, somehow. I don't know how that's played out. Maybe a bit of funny business with the timer, possibly for Damon Fisher. They've got Shane Randall hot on their heels, who has now made his way past Rick Feiger and Nick Hasler during their pit stop period. One thing that we noticed during the ad break was we questioned if Muggleton was ahead of Fewens by the cone. That was corrected during the safety car period, that Fewens was actually ahead of Muggleton, as well as Jim Caperonis over Michael Schroeder as well. So those guys swapped and changed positions during the safety car just to correct where they were based on how they exited pit lane as well. But lap 31 of 47, we're coming on to lap 32 of this race. And for Logan Barnett, he has got 16 laps to go before he claims himself his 5th win of the season. And with 2 rounds to go, he's only 1 away, if he gets the win tonight, from matching the record of Rick Sibra and Stephen Kennedy. And he is 2 away, and he'd have to go perfect over the last 3 rounds. He is 2 away from breaking that record and going 7 wins in a single season. He would be the only driver to ever do so, and what a better way for a driver to prove that maybe they shouldn't have come down to Split 2 if they're a little bit disheveled by that choice, and what a way for them to prove that maybe they did deserve to be in Split 1.
It's an interesting one because it was definitely the shake-up that Logan needed. You know, we have missed him. I can speak from a team perspective. Absolutely missed him in Split 1. We know he had the capability, but this season, you know, he's gone back to Split 2 for a driver building confidence and believing in himself. It has absolutely been worked beautifully for him because he's driven superbly. So that was a great thing to see, and we'll see him back in Split 1, no doubt. And I think he can run easily in the top 10 there in the Split 1. As we see a little bit of action going on here. Blanchard and Schroeder, by the looks of it, they are going a tongue and leather here, Hamish. This is really good racing.
Yeah, some phenomenal racing. Just quickly on Barnett. If he wins tonight, Scott, he literally just has to have around about a top 10 finish in the final round, and he would go up. Because if he had a poor round next week, that's one of his drop rounds. He's only had 1 round this season where he's finished outside of the top 10. So if he has the poor round next week and uses it as his drop round, and then he has a consistent run in the last round, he'd be pretty locked into Split 1. He could even possibly get himself into a position that he would only need a top 15, depending on how the next 2 and how next round goes, leading into Phillip Island in the final round of the season as well. Further up, Jason Fewens and Matt Muggleton going door to door. Oh, it's firing up between them, and they've got Schroeder hot on their heels. So, you know, Fewens said he wants to race, and well, He is going door-to-door with drivers out there. You got to respect it. We love door-to-door racing, Scott. A little bit of rubbing's all right. Rubbing's racing, as long as someone doesn't end up off the track and in the wall. I say fair game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did notice Schroeder got past Jim Caparotis on that preceding lap. And I was watching Matt Mugwilton and Fewen swap positions on the timing chart there. So it had eventually boiled down. Matt Mugwilton said, I'm going to get past you, mate, because Sanderson, they're starting to pull ahead and he's right behind Burns. I want to get a top 5 here. And he's gone about it. So there was a question that did raise me, and I was going to talk about it with would Mugwilton really start to put on the pressure? And this is going to be a test because we watched Dean Lochdale struggle to get past Fewens. Yes, Fewens did have a lighter load of the car, but Matt Mugwilton has also got more worn tyres. So that was a very interesting scenario, and it looks like he's starting to clear out on Fewens at the moment. But that was a good rub up there. Nothing wrong with that, Hamish.
No, nothing wrong with that. They just got a little bit unsettled. That's okay. You know, as long as you're not, you know, turning into somebody and turning them round or forcing them directly into a wall, at least in a league like this, you know, fair game. You know, if it's a more fun style league where the rules are a bit more loose, then I say go ahead, bang doors, knock people off track. You're there to have some fun. You're there to have, you know, a wild race. That's the prerogative of the series. But for vets, you know, rules are very tight, they're very concise, but there is room to have those sorts of door-to-door battles, and that's where some of the best battles can come from, Scott. That's where we can get some of those memorable moments, and that's where we can, you know, feelings start to flare, and some drivers' egos maybe get a little bit rubbed, but that's where we can really get some pure racing in the Gen 3 car, which is what we want to see. We know that this car, it's hard to make passes outside of the toe, unless you've got pure pace over the car ahead of you. But it's one that can lead to close battling if you can go back and forth with someone at the correct track. And I think the next 2 weeks, next week at Sandown, that's going to be a strategy play. Now, you can get some good battling there. It's hard to make overtakes. So, again, I think it's going to come more down to strategy. Phillip Island, however, is going to not only come down to the strategic mastership of some drivers, it's going to come down to how willing they are to battle on track, because you can have some great battling at Phillip Island. We've seen some incredible strategy plays there in the past. I think back to my very first season in Vets, and this guy here, Simon Heddersheet, pull off a strategic masterclass at Phillip Island. He came in, went from the lead to P4, dropped time, but he was saving fuel. He then came in for his second stop, and he came out in the lead of the race by about 5 seconds over P2, just based on his strategy play and how well he can serve tyres, conserve fuel, and how well his fuel play went. So it's a track that will reward that, and I think the more that drivers actually practice over the week in learning that strategy, learning where they want to put the car, learning how they want to set themselves up for that final round, and obviously how clean they want to drive, because we know it can be chaotic, that's going to lead to an incredible race and an incredible crescendo to our season there as well. So, you know, to quickly sum up, next week, strategy. Last round, strategy, but how willing you are to battle as well is what is going to determine how well that race goes for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting as you're going crescendo. That's a nice word. I'll have to really check what that means.
Crescendo is like big finish to something. That's what crescendo is. It's a big finish, big finale of something. So is what it is. So.
Well, that's a new one for me, and as you know, if I said it too much, I'd butcher it. But yeah, it's we were just watching there where we were seeing Rick Viger. He was on the lights like a GT3 driver, wasn't he? He was telling Heddersheet, "Hey, you hurry up! I want to get this done." And that would see both him, Rick Viger, and Nick Horsler go into the top 15. So. That's an interesting one. As we're watching Burns, Stacey Boyd's got on the outside of him. Burns is going to fight this. Absolutely. He's going to have the inside line side by side. Who's going to get on the traction the best here? It looks like Burns has got that inside line, got on the traction beautifully. This is going to bring Sanderson up there to have a little look. That was a nice little battle going on there. Very, very good throttle control. As we see Boyd, he has a little look on the outside there. This is starting to liven up here, Hamish. We've got still 11 odd laps to go, but this is a really good battle pack of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars easily involved with a couple more lurking in the background.
Yeah, if this blows up, well, the likes of Caparonis and Blanchard will be licking their lips at the prospects of getting some free positions out of it. You mentioned there's 6 cars in this battle. From Paul Burns all the way back to Michael Schroeder, these cars are separated by barely a 15th. I mean, there is nothing in it. And we saw how easily they were getting kind of overlapping with each other as Burns was going forward on Boyd. Sanderson was trying to sneak in. In behind them, they had Muggleton and Fewens battling, with Schroeder looking to sneak in as well. And as I said, the more that these guys start to overlap and the more that these battles start to overlap, the higher the possibility that we get of carnage ensuing, as Matt Muggleton wants it up the inside of Sanderson at turn 1. Side by side, Sanderson forced wide. That'll be a slowdown for the SCR car. So he's now going to drop back all the way to his teammate, Jim Caparonis, if he's not careful, towards the top of the hill. Muggleton's gotten past. Fewens wants it too. Can Schroeder sneak up the inside at turn 4, or turn 3, sorry. He wants it 3 wide with Fewens. He wasn't quite far enough up. Sanderson has cleared that slowdown, and somehow he's survived ahead of Michael Schroeder, but Fewens and Muggleton snuck on by in that first sector. And for Sanderson, well, it's now time to try and recuperate, try and get your head back in the game, as Kappa wants it on Schroeder. Not quite far enough up, too tight of a line. But for Sanderson, he needs to regroup, he needs to recalculate, and then he needs to try and come back at Fewens to get that position back, as Randall's been off the road at turn 4. And now Hasler and Viger have knocked past him too. I have to wonder if maybe there was some contact with Hedesheet or Rick Viger if they were hot on his heels.
Really, really unfortunate to see Shane Randall go back there. He was driving absolutely beautifully. You talked about driver of the day earlier. He came into our minds as well there, Hamish. Very unfortunate for him, but this is starting to explode. These drivers have said this safety car brought them all back together. Yes, we've got a couple of packs going, but there is a lot of drivers that are very, very close together here, that it's anyone's race, and everyone wants to be in that top 15, especially in this battle pack.
I think arguably between Randall and Hasler, our driver of the day choice may have to come from who finishes ahead of who. I mean, they've both had a ripper run. Hasler's been great, up 15 spots, his best race to date this season. Randall, one of his best in the last half of the season as well. So depending on where both of them finish, and if Hasler would have finished ahead of Randall or Randall would have finished ahead of Hasler, that might determine our choice tonight. But I'd say they're probably both the front runners, aside from maybe if he can pull off a top 5, or if they can pull off a top 5, Jason Fewens, Wayne Sanderson, or Jim Caparonis, or even Michael Schroeder. I mean, that's pretty much the only crux to that option at this stage, is if one of these guys get into that top 5. But with Boyd and Burns running away, it's not looking as likely anymore with just under 10 laps to go.
Yeah, did you see those marbles on that track getting spewed all over? It's something drivers will have to take in consideration when they go for the move now, because there is a lot of debris. It does add a little bit of a different flavour to the racing line. You have to be careful, especially getting late on in this race. Talking to a driver a day, I'm really liking Nick Horsler at the moment from Angry Birds Racing. Hamish, he was one that we did mention in the break as well. That strategy call with him and teammate Rick Viger to make up those grounds, that was absolutely fantastic. And this is a really good result for Nick at the moment, who, by the way, he does a bit of streaming as well. Make sure you check him out. You'll see him on the Discord. Click on his link, give him a follow, and support your fellow V8 veterans in that cause. He does it every week. Very committed to it. Hell of a nice bloke. So you jump on board and check him out.
Yeah, I know he streamed a lot of his races back in Split 3. I'm unsure if he's done it for Split 2 actually just yet, but yeah, if you see him streaming, be sure to hop in there, because it might mean that you can keep an eye on actually how Split 2's going, since it's not a live broadcast. The only way you can really see how it's going is, oh, Troy Sipple is off the road on the second straight.
Has he got that car going? A lot of smoke there. I think he's still moving, Hamish.
Yeah, it's going, but it's heavily damaged.
That's damaged.
So I predict he's caught that curb of death up at turn 1, and then that's just ricocheted the car down the hill, possibly, Scott. But that'll now have to get nursed back to pit lane, and that's unfortunate for Troy, but that's unfortunate. That looks like it's going to be race done pretty much. He'll come out of pits, but he'll come out a lap down and really know where to go at this stage.
hasn't he had one of these seasons, Hamish, that just hasn't gone right for him? Like the season prior, you know, especially the first half of last season, drove absolutely beautifully, making good ground. But, you know, drivers go through these periods, and it's probably something we don't talk about as much because it does happen. You go through these periods of where things just are not going your way. You cannot make a trick happen, and it gets you down a little bit as a driver because you know you can do better. But at the end of the day, you've got to turn up week in, week out. You've got to get back on that pony if you're a Mustang, and get back out there and keep going at it, because eventually you'll get the monkey off your back and you'll end up, you know, back where you are and have a couple of good races, and that makes you smile.
Matt Scholes is back in pit lanes. This is an odd strategy from the 801 sim racing crew. I hope Paul Burns does not have to come in for a third stop as well, because that would completely ruin, which has been arguably one of his best races of the season. He's remained where he started in P4. He's still inside of the top 5. You know, did we maybe even give a nod to Burns for driver of the day if he were to continue in this position, Scott? I know Hasler's had a great run, and I'm very heavy on that Hasler or Randall option, depending on who finishes ahead of who. But if both of them maybe crash out, is Burns the option then? Because this has been a great run from him tonight. And, you know, if he was the option after those guys, maybe a deserving one.
Well, there's only 3 drivers who have maintained their position, Hamish. Logan Barnett, Dean Logsdale, and Paul Burns. So I'm not against that. I think that is a really good nomination as well. I'd like to see what the chat thinks, because you raised some really good points about the way he's driven. He is in the top 5. That is a serious recognition. And he's had his battle. He's done a strategy. Unfortunately for Ricky Hyde, I'm not sure why he pitted on that one. Maybe he was short of fuel. I'm not sure what the go was there. But, yeah, this is he's got some good drivers. Stacey Boyd's been driving really well. I mean, he is down 2 positions from qualifying, but he has kept up in that front running pack. Matt Melbourne, you know, we talked about drivers not getting driver of the day before. We like to share that one around because everyone wants a burger, definitely over at Chubby Buns. So absolutely get in there and support Chubby Buns if you're in Sydney, and grab yourself one of them. But I don't think Paul Burns has had driver of the day this season, Hamish.
No, he hasn't. I'm still waiting for Jim to open up his Melbourne location. I've been waiting for 2 years. Jim, come on, let's go. I want to go try a chubby bun, and I don't particularly want to have to pay for a flight to Sydney. It's too much to ask, Scott. Maybe, you know, I think we deserve one in Victoria, surely.
Well, yeah, I do. I think Melbourne would absolutely love a chubby buns, especially a late night chubby buns. We see everyone out of that casino, rolling out of the clubs.
The nightlife in Melbourne, I think, needs a chubby buns, realistically. I mean, you know, for the younger generation, I sound really old saying that, but the younger generation, you know, you come out of Cloud9, you come out of Revs, and you might go get a kebab, but I reckon a chubby buns would go even better after a night out, just personally.
Absolutely. I would be all there. I'd have sauce on my face and lick at my lips, mate. It would be sensational. But anyway, I kind of envy those who have managed to call in there. There's been quite a few of the V8 drivers get in there and get themselves a chubby bun. Make sure you take a picture of yourself there too, and share it on the Discord. That'd be fantastic. But as we're watching Blanchard here, he is just outside the top 10. He's got Jim Caparonis talking to the chubby buns. The Southern Cross Racing driver is up his 3 positions into the top 10. Damon Fisher, Team AJR. I want to talk about him a little bit, Hamish. He is down 6 positions. He showed some really promising pace in practice. This is probably race hasn't gone his way tonight. That does happen, but I think we could see him start to push up the field, especially come next season. He's shown a turn of pace here at Red Bull. Yes, it didn't work out tonight in the race. He wouldn't be like being back 6 positions, but otherwise than that, I think he's a driver that's great.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think for Damon, obviously formerly of Quantum Racing, now at AJR, is maybe the secret for Damon. Maybe AJR need to try and lure Brett Fisher into the team and have the brothers racing together. Maybe that would be the secret sauce for Damon to become a podium contender week in and week out, because maybe he's too busy thinking about that sibling rivalry between 2 separate teams of Shadow Racing and Team AJR. And maybe it'd be better to have them together and just have their rivalry be inter-team and pushing each other to go further and better each week.
Yeah, there is that. I think he's fitted in very well over at Team AJR. There is that transition period. You would know this as a team within your own there, Hamish, that drivers come in and sometimes they really kick into gear and it gives them another level. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time for drivers to transition and find their feet, whether that be a season or so, and then they seem to kick on from there. And I think that's where Damon Fisher sits. Perhaps that little bit of rivalry you talk about would be good. I think, the way that he's got some very good drivers around him, obviously, in Logsdale, and not to forget Luke Allman as well, who was in the chat tonight, driving exceptionally well. Driving very smart and exceptionally well in Split 1.
So these battles look to continue on. We've got 5 laps to go when we cross the line. It'll be 4 to the checkered flag. For Spriggs and Logsdale, they're continuing this battle, but you have to feel both drivers more willing to maintain this position on the road. Sean Cullen has gone round at turn 3, but the car does not look to be damaged enough to require a tow, so possibly a slight mistake, maybe a bit of onset from another driver as Fewens is now dropping down the order too. I have to wonder if hopefully he's not disconnected from the server. No, he's back in the server and in behind Matt Muggleton. That would be heartbreak for Fewens after such a great race, but again, needs to be cautious of that internet connection, and hopefully that does sort itself out. Obviously, the big news coming out this week for iRacing into Season 2 of 2025, Scott, that there will actually be a penalty flag for poor ping on circuit, which will then require you to come into pit lane and fix your internet issues. Otherwise, you will be getting disqualified from the iRacing officials, not just from the inter-league officials for RC. So that should somewhat limit some of those moments where you get really bad blinking from some drivers, and it's going to force them to fix their internet, and it's not going to put the pressure back on RC to check that. It'll be based on the inner game sort of penalty system. So I actually think it's a really good inclusion, and I think obviously it can happen to anyone. Anyone can have poor internet, so it's fair for everyone. It's going to more or less come down to how well is your internet, and how well can you actually fix it to have it not ruin your championship.
It's an interesting one. There would have to be some sort of, area in it that it just doesn't happen straight away. There'd have to happen to a certain level, a little. Oh, we see another car off in the background there. That is Damon Fisher. Now, he's got that car going. I did see another driver go through the Brett Taylor through pit lane side. Whether the incident limit affected Brett Taylor there, I'm not sure what happened to Damon Fisher. We're just talking about him. Thought he was driving very well. He's had a moment and he's trying to clear something there. But yeah, that was very unfortunate. You see him dropping right back. Yeah,
so Hasler's now up 16 positions in this race. Viger's up 10. Randall's up 10. So this trio has been gaining together. Arnie's now up 3. Dave being a bit quiet this season, maybe hoping for a big resurgence next season. And it takes you a couple of seasons to get used to the dynamics of vets once again when you've been away for a while, plus learning a new car. So I'm sure Dave will be up to pace fairly shortly, possibly by the end of the year or by the end of Season 3 of 2025, maybe, of the officials. But for Randall, this is a great showing, and for Hasler, who's our current front runner for driver of the day, and then Rick Viger as well. And of course, we don't necessarily give it to drivers who've gained the most positions. The caveat is we don't expect Nick to qualify up this high, so that's why he's actually driving above his ability tonight, and he's actually had an exceptional run. So that's sort of the caveat on the measuring system of, well, Nick's not normally a front runner. He doesn't normally race around this position. He's just done well to gain positions and get his way up the order and avoid the carnage.
Yeah, he has. He's driven a beautiful strategic race. I think a top 15 result for him. He should be absolutely stoked for it, especially in this field. Thinking of a drive, it just crossed me. Well, we don't very often talk about Alice Bales from Wheelie Bin's Mayhem Republic. They do have a little bit of a league. It's got XCM on the side, so perhaps it's not quite updated there. But the Wheelie Bins, they do have a league there that you can actually jump in, and they do some random races. Hamish, it's sort of open to everyone. You just got to go sort of soft and jump in when you can. It's not been in there before. I know Jamie and I used to jump in there and do some races with the Wheelie Bin boys as well.
Yeah, I've done a legacy supercars race at Bathurst with wheelie bins. It was a lot of fun. They had the damage set to like it repairs the damage as the race goes on instead of you needing to cover the pit lane. A lot of fun. Another one of those fun sort of races where you just hop in, have a crack, have a send. Doesn't really matter if you hit someone into the wall or if you door someone. It's just about getting out there, having a go, and having a bit of fun and having some fun battles on track. It doesn't mean that you go in every corner and send someone from 3 car lengths back, but what it means is you're getting into a battle where you're going door to door. Someone might get turned at some point. You might decide, oh, I'm close enough, I'm going to go for a send, and they don't expect you to. One of those sorts of races where there's not really much on offer apart from just a fun night of racing. So, yeah, big shout out to those guys and those races that they put on as well. Jason in the chat, on a serious note though, it only occurs during Vets races. I switched it from Telstra to Optus and now to Starlink to try and get on top of this issue. I would not recommend Starlink, paying a premium and not receiving a stable product. Yeah, the people who've got Starlink that I know have got Starlink have only had issues, it seems, with Starlink. Personally for me, I'm on Aussie Broadband, but I think there's a heap of other, like IONET and other companies out there who offer just as much local technical support, but also just some great connection speeds as well. So yeah, I would look away from the mainstay brands, Scott, and go for those IONETs or Aussie Broadbands or something like that.
Yeah, I'm an Aussie Broadband supporter. I put many people on it. Can you believe this is the last lap of 47 laps completed here? Really impressed the way that Spriggs has been able to stay with Logsdale, especially during this last stop. Has not left him by more than half a second. So I'd imagine Dean would be sweating some there. He wants to make sure he gets there. But this has been a great race by these 3 drivers. They have been a standout this series, have they not? You know, driven absolutely beautifully. So that's been a great battle by these 2.
It has indeed. But for Logan Barnett, he is a little bit less than 2 kilometres away from his 5th win of the season. It'll be matching seasons like Matthew Scholes, Steve Grumley, Steve Lanyon of taking that many wins in a season. Only 2 of those drivers went on to win titles, those being Grumley and Scholes. But for Barnett, he traverses the final corner this evening. He looks to catch the checkered flag at the Red Bull Ring for the final time on international soil this season. Barnett is a race winner for 9.5 Sim Sports before we head home for the final 2 rounds. As Logsdale comes across the line, P2 ahead of Jason Spriggs. Good points gains for those championship contenders. Burns and Boyd make up your top 5 with championship contender and now P3 in the championship, Matt Muggleton. P6 on the road ahead of Fewen, Schroeder, Sanderson and Caperonis for a double SCR top 10. Hedesheed in his return gets back to where he started this race in P11. Blanchard in P12. Rick Viger will lead his teammate to P13. Hasler, P14. Shane Randall for your top 15. All those guys up double digits. Arnie, Zeal, Clifton, Haynes and Sheriffs the top 20 with Bales, Baxter, Stoyles, Weston, Vandermeul and Bush, Lovegrove, Barella, Hyde, Duggan, Fisher, Mackay, Cullen, Taylor, Damon Fisher, Matt Scholes, Troy Sipple and Jamie Peters at the back of the field. Peters not getting to 75% here this evening. But what a race. What a race for these drivers and what a race for the championship leader. Another win on the trot, Scott. 5 now this season from 8 races that he has participated in. And at this stage, who can beat him?
Yeah, absolutely dominated tonight, did Logan Barnett. He was the only driver to run into the 31s on race pace. His race pace was a 131.714 best lap time. There'd be some split drivers who'd be very happy with that time as their race time or their best lap. But how well did Paul Burns drive? Absolutely phenomenal. Matt Muggleton, what a drive by him, Hamish, to be able to come up 12 positions, keep himself in that championship hunt he has with this, got himself into a P6. That's a phenomenal drive. Schroeder, really good drive after probably not so much of a great last week by him. Good to see Kappa back into the top 10. Well done. But for me, Nick Horsler, that's a phenomenal drive, Hamish. That strategy and those 2 drivers working together at Angry Birds Racing, I thought was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was indeed. And I think for Hasler, this has been an exceptional run here this evening. and he will take home our Chubby Buns Burgers Driver of the Day award, up 16 positions. We do punch into drivers' heads that we don't like to give it necessarily to those who make the most positions up in a race. But for Nick, he doesn't normally qualify in this position, and he's not normally racing around this position. So this is an exceptional run. And look on the replay, we can see how bad that incident actually got for the EWT car and co through that section. I mean, look at that. That was absolutely explosive. I believe that might have been Brett Taylor involved in that.
There's nothing he could have done that.
Scott Weston. Yeah, nothing he could have done, which was unfortunate. But yeah, Nick Hasler, driver of the day this evening for Angry Birds Racing. A big congratulations to him. Up 16 spots and inside your top 15. It also means, you know, we do like to give it to a top 15 driver from time to time. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be inside the top 10 to get that award. You know, we want to give it to people who we think have had exceptional runs. We do want to shout out, though, Paul Burns. Great run for him tonight as well. Jason Fewens, Michael Schroeder, Shane Randall, Rick Viger, Wayne Sanderson, Jim Caperonis. They all had great runs this evening. But for Hasler, he went an above beyond where he would normally be racing and made up some exceptional positions throughout this race and got himself up the most positions in this one and inside the top 14. So that's an incredible effort from him as well. We have got our P2 on the road here this evening. Mr. Dean Logsdale in the green room. We'll drag him in for a quick chat. Mr. Logsdale, P2 on the road tonight and well within this championship hunt at the moment. After this round, you now sit P4 in the championship, 10 points behind Matt Muggleton at this stage. We lead into our home soil next week for Sandown and then Phillip Island in the final round. But talk us through this championship, Dean, because you've been on a resurgence the last sort of 4 or 5 rounds. And at this stage, you find yourself in an opportunity to get into a podium position and get yourself up to split 1 next season to join your teammate Luke Ullman. What's it been like? What's the journey been like this season to get to this point? And how do you think you've been better adapting to this car compared to Gen 2 last season and seasons prior?
Yeah, thanks, Hamish. Definitely having a lot of fun this season. I was really looking forward to the Gen 3 coming out. At the time, I've only been on iRacing for about 18 months. So at the time, I was driving all sorts of cars and, you know, I felt straight away I'd have a bit of an advantage over some of the vets guys just driving a lot of different cars. So, yeah, as soon as I jumped in it, I felt comfortable. It was a bit of an iffy start to the championship. I think I was putting a bit too much pressure on myself. But, yeah, from sort of round 4, I really just concentrated on one, qualifying well, so putting in some good sprint laps. And also just hitting all my markers, you know, like hitting all the apexes, not scrubbing the tyres, you know, not making stupid moves like this race, for instance. I knew I had nothing for Logan. I was going to have to run quali laps for the first few laps to try and keep up with him. So I thought, okay, just settle into your own pace. You know, the guys behind, I was at a similar pace to the start of the race. I wasn't under too much pressure, and yeah, and I'm finding it as well, just by really concentrating on hitting all my markers and the apexes and not getting wild with the car, that I do tend to have, apart from Logan and Jason, just that couple of tenths when the tyres start to wear. So I still feel really comfortable with the car when the tyres are starting to go.
Yeah, we absolutely used those tyres to the best effect tonight to be able to hold Jason Spriggs off you there, Hamish. That was, Dean, absolutely well driven. Talk us through that first pit stop cycle when you came back out and you seen Jason Fewens was there in front of you, and you could see he was very racy. He was actually quite fast tonight. He really wanted to get in and muscle along with you. What were you thinking? You're thinking, do I have to get past him because you're seeing Sanderson starting to close in? And then also you had Jason Spriggs. He was on a totally different pit stop strategy to you. So there was a few things going on during after that first pit stop cycle.
Yeah, so going into the pits, I had in my head that I was going to put 60 litres in. And then because I pulled up behind Logan, I started having different ideas. Bad move. I should have stuck with my original plan, and I was playing around with the fuel. So then it put me back on the jacks when I dropped, and I ended up putting another 15 litres in. So I probably lost about 5 seconds there, which is why I dropped behind Jason. And Jason Spriggs as well. He run past his pit stop, and then I think he thought at the time, oh, I might as well fill it up. So that's why he dropped back as well. But yeah, so again, when I come out on fresh tyres, I don't have a real strong. I don't have a quicker pace. You know, Jason, I was struggling to catch him a few ins, and then again, as the tyres were wearing off, I started to catch him, and yeah, he wasn't making it easy. He definitely put up a good fight, and we banged doors a couple of times, and yeah, it was fun. At one point, I nearly went off, and yeah, it was good fun though. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And Jason Spriggs, I mean, I'm racing in a couple of series, obviously the Vets and ASR, and the last 4 or 5 weeks, every single race we're right with each other. He's getting the better of me most times, but yeah, we're having a lot of fun. It's clean driving, and it's really good fun. We're both enjoying it.
Well, he absolutely applied the pressure, especially from that last pit stop or last safety car to you, and you held him off. You drove superbly. I'm sure you're getting the credit from your team boss over there at AJR, and they'll be up and about, well driven again tonight, mate, and absolutely stoked for you. Driving beautifully, especially this second half of the season. Well done.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Well, Dean, of course, leading into the final 2 rounds, it's more or less coming down for that final podium position in the championship between you and Matt. You can obviously still beat both Logan and Jace. They're just a little bit more ahead of you guys than what you guys are a bit closer than the both of them at this stage. What's sort of the strategy now going into the final 2 rounds? Because obviously next week is pretty much your last chance to have a poor round. And the final round, you've got to have a nice clean run. Is it more or less just try and keep doing what you're doing, focus on that qualifying, get the car at the front end of town, and then maintain those podium finishes for yourself?
Yeah, exactly that. Matt's driving really well too. We've been battling it out for a few races. If I'm not battling with Jason, it seems to be Matt. And as he said in the chat, I've always seems to have someone right up my backside. And yeah, we've had some great battles. But Matt's apparently he's having knee surgery. I think he might be having a replacement knee, a bit like Sean van der Meulen. So I'm not sure how that's going to go for him, but yeah, my goal is to again try and start up towards the front. The guys up the front, they don't seem to do anything. You know, there's no crazy dive bombing, or we all give each other respect, and you know, just try and keep a good top 6 position, and wherever I end up, I end up. So I think a couple of top 6s will probably see me through, or top 5s. And that's the plan. I mean, if I make it in the split one, it'd be awesome to join Luke. He's there, you know, representing AJR on his own at the moment. So yeah, it'll be great to join Luke in split one. He's doing a great job as well. He's top 10 in his first season in split one. So yeah, looking forward to that if I can make it.
So apparently Matt is out next week, but he's back for Phillip Island. So if you can have a strong run next week, Dean, that'll put the pressure back on him for Phillip Island.
Well, that's right, yeah. I mean, I know if I was having knee surgery and then coming back a week later to jump in a sim, I know Sean struggled, but, you know, won't put that past Matt. He's a good driver, and, yeah, we'll battle it out to the end of the season, I'm sure. But
if it's his left leg, he might be fine. He can just learn how to right foot brake.
Yeah, this is true. That's what I do anyway, so... Yeah, no, it's going to be an exciting end. I mean, I think there's talk that it's possibly top 5 going up. And I think, you know, if the 5 drivers that are in those positions at the moment go up, I think we'll probably all deserve it.
Well, that's a good point you make, though, because currently the top 5, you then extend to Wayne Sanderson, Ricky Hyde, Jim Caperonis, Paul Burns, and Stacey Boyd. Blanchard's in there too, but they're the closest between each other. Sanderson and Hyde, 3 points separate them at the moment. So it's going to go which way or the other. This round, probably lucky for Hyde to be a drop round. he needs to try and get a good position in the next 2 weeks. Same with Wayne, so that's going to be tight as well. But Dean, thanks so much for coming over chat to us. Great job tonight. Great job this season. Hopefully next time we're having a chat to you, it's either as a race winner or as a person who's finished on the podium in the championship and going up to Split 1 next season.
No, thanks, Hamish. Thanks, Scott. Great broadcast as always. And yeah, hopefully I can get on the podium next week and finish the season and go up to Split 1. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, having a good season. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much, Dean.
That's one motivated driver right there. He definitely wants to join his teammate, especially after seeing Luke up there. He got promoted last season, Hamish, for Team AGR. They want another driver up there, and he's well on track, is Dean Logsdale, to make it. So he's driving exceptionally well.
Yeah, he is indeed. And I think that at this stage, barring a nuclear explosion to some drivers, you'd have to argue that Barnett and Spriggs are our championship contenders, and then Logsdale and Muggleton are that final podium position. If it is a top 5 that would be going up, Scott, then that would mean that, well, that battle all of a sudden between Sanderson, Hyde, Burns, Boyd, Caperonis, like that all of a sudden becomes a lot more tasty, because one poor round from some of those drivers next week, or even in the final round at Phillip Island, that is going to completely change who is in the hunt for that Split 1 spot. So it's going to be very interesting how that's going to work out for those drivers and how they can best situate themselves in an opportunity for Split 1 next season. But coming up next week for round 9 of the season, of course, we'll be heading out back to our homeland for the final 2 rounds of the season. It'll be 2 weeks in a row, Scott, that we'll be at our home circuit, starting with Sandown in beautiful Springvale, Victoria, for a 150k race before we end our season at Phillip Island for 300ks for the Enduro this season. It's going to be a wild into the championship, and I'm looking forward to it. I think there's probably no 2 better opportunities to go racing to end out this title than Phillip Island and Sandown over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. I would have liked to seen Sandown be a 200 kilometre, but it is a bit of a sprint race there. It's a cracking track. We've seen it in Vets, had put on a really good show. Does run a bit of a risk on safety cars. Drivers are going to have to be careful. We haven't visited it with the Gen 3, so that's going to be a new one. Phillip Island, we probably got a bit of a taste of that earlier on in the season. There was a lot of drivers doing a few Phillip Island sessions in the lead up to the opening of round 1 for V8 Vets. So a few drivers got their heads around that, but yeah, 2 cracking tracks here in the state of Victoria. Really looking forward. It's going to determine your championship, top 3, top 5, and your winner over the next 2 rounds. So this is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, of course, leading into the final round next week, we'll obviously know where drivers situate after the drop rounds have been included, so we'll be able to have championship graphics next week, and as well for the final round, when we know exactly where drivers are going to be heading and how they're sort of situated leading into both rounds. So we so look forward to that one, because the next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely intense. You guys do not want to miss it. It's always been a barn burner at Sandown and at Phillip Island, and I have a feeling that this championship, which has already been one of the cleanest Split 2 seasons of all time, it's also been one of the best in terms of some of the quality of racing that we have had throughout these fields. It is going to be absolutely awesome. So you guys do not want to miss it. Be sure to hit the like button, to subscribe, the bell icon as well to the V8 Vets channel, so you guys can see all the action from Split 2 to Split 3 to Split 4 and how all those title races come together and who ends up coming out on top. And be sure to go check out the SimSpeed TV channel, with the likes of Jay Kennedy and David Haynes and Scott Rankin and others in the booth, where you can watch live Thursday nights 8:30 p.m. the Split 1 action. You can see how well my co-host Scott Gamble does in his hopes of claiming a 7th V8 Veterans Championship next to his name. But I've been Hamish Munro with Scott Gamble alongside. Big thank you to all of our series sponsors, including our title sponsors, Racecraft Simulation, as well Logitech G, Parramatta, Isuzu Ute, Player One Sim Gear, Nova Sim Sports, Sudspeed Gloves, and LGC Images. And as well to Chubby Buns Burgers for their Driver of the Day award tonight. It went the way of Nick Hasler. Next time, it could go to you. But until next time, we appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here with us once again. And until then, stay safe, drive hard, and as always, bye for now.
playing weak, no, I'm playing for keeps. Can't stop me, I'm a legend. I run with the crew that's making the moves. Get out of the way, we coming through. We got this, never stopping, and we won't lose. No, we can't lose. Yeah!
The Racing Series is a new milestone in Logitech G.
All the great old wheels, the G29, the G920, the G923, they all have their own unique way of connecting to each other, but there's no room for expansion with those products.
So the question arose was, what if we were to give the opportunity for the racer to switch out from a drifting wheel to a GT rim?
With the wheel hubs that we've created, that's got a very specific button set, but you can replace any of the steering wheels.
And the real lovely aspect to this was we could give the user, driver and the racer the opportunity to experience different genres of race.
That allows drivers to craft high quality, customized setups that resonate with your individual racing style.
When we start with the design, we always start sketching. Very often, once we've got sketches, we start discussing with engineering.
We had 3 rounds of engineering testing or user testing where we invited in users from sim racing, and every single round of feedback we refine, the product based on what they tell us.
In this sim racing lab, again, we're going to use data to really analyze what a driver needs. We've used everything from eye tracking to the inputs from the pedals, the inputs from the, let's say, input devices, the wheel and the pedals, the shifter. We're taking that and we're compiling it so that we can build different products based on those individuals' needs for all consumers and all drivers.
I don't know of anyone else in the industry that's actually doing this kind of research into their products to see how their products are affecting performance of their users.
We've built the product to make sure that it's as reliable as possible.
So the innovations in engineering that I'd say we're most proud of is the sequential handbrake and shifter toolless changeover. This is now a patented system, so it's really easy for the user to just switch between modes.
If you give people the tools to do what they want, they will.
They will just go off and have fun.
Introducing the Rackraft PT1, custom-built full chassis racing simulator. The design project, codenamed The Cage, an 80/40 extrusion chassis sitting on top of a Sigma Integrale DK2 Plus 4-point full motion actuator system. No compromises in the cockpit of the PT1 simulator. To maximize the experience, we start with a 49-inch ultra-wide monitor for the greatest field of view in a small footprint of the simulator, down to the SimuCube wheelbase that's tucked up and behind the monitors with SimCore extensions to get things out of the driving area. Everything is connected to a Cube Controls GTX steering wheel with the built-in dash and all the extra button functions available at your fingertips. Driving through the Raceworks S1 pedals, the potentiometer throttle and the 2 hydraulic pedals for brake and clutch ensures you maximize the feel underfoot, and seating yourself into an OMP HTER bucket racing seat with OMP belts connected to a G-belt tensioner to provide that extra feeling and the heightened experience while you're driving. Additional interfaces and accessories in the PT1, we have twin butt kickers, one on either side of the OMP seat, as well as a Jinx sequential shifter, the SimPush Race Logic timer to the left-hand side, a Racecraft built-in WinSim kit with Philips Hue lighting and a built-in soundbar, plus the OMP side net to finish off the experience in the PT1. The Racecraft PT1, build number 1, the ultimate in sim racing experience. combining the best products in the market with the passionate, no-compromise approach that goes beyond racing simulation.
Yeah, we worked it. 2 laps left, come on.